not everyone has the potential to perform, and
Really?
or is looking towards growing. So there are people who are really good at doing the things that they're doing, but do they have the drive? Do they have the ambition? Do they have the? It's almost like, let's give an example of an elastic. How far can you expand it? You know, or has it lost its elasticity? Can you stretch it and it's able to do much more? So even when you look at individuals, is this person able to do much more than they're doing currently? And do they want to do much more? Because I've had instances where people tell you, you know what, this is the maximum level that I want to grow in an organization. I don't want to become the head of marketing. I don't want to become the head of HR, but I'd like to be number 2 in command. And that's the maximum that I want to do. So trying to grow that person and say you want to elevate them to leadership may not be really a good thing to do.
Hola, people friends, and welcome to the People Champion podcast by Elevate HR. This is the 5th episode of our new segment, which we call the People Companies Impact Stories, where we feature exceptional people doing impactful work. Now, our guest today is one of the most dynamic, most brilliant minds I've ever interacted with. He is a seasoned HR thought leader. He has over 20 years of experience in the HR space. He has deep expertise in matters HR leadership, HR strategy, and the like. He is currently serving as the HR head for Swissport International's East and South Africa subcluster. Wow, what a tongue twister. He played a pivotal role in navigating pandemic challenges, implementing organizational challenges, and contributing to revenue loss mitigation. His diverse background includes notable positions at EABL, KCB, JCG, wow, so many abbreviations, IBM, East Africa, where he earned recognition as a top recruiter in the Middle East and Africa. He has an MBA in management and leadership certifications, and he brings a dynamic, strategic approach to human resource management. Wycliffe, karibu sana to the podcast.
Thank you, Billy.
I am so excited to have you on this show. You know, earlier on, I stumbled upon a meme, and this person was saying, actually, they live in a constant state of fear of being asked, like a fun fact about themselves. Yes. Now, because you're one of the most fun people I know, I want to start off this question by this podcast by just asking you to share a fun fact with us.
Wow, I didn't see that coming. Really, what do I want to share as a fun fact about myself? That I was for very, very, very many years afraid of using an escalator.
Really?
So I had this phobia of escalators, and I couldn't get myself to use an escalator. And every time there were escalators, I had to use either the stairs or the lift. So, but fun fact is I actually got over it. So I think, was it last weekend, I saw some old lady who almost went around in Sarit Center, and she didn't want to use the escalator. And I just thought, wow, that was me. Many years back. But interesting is, in as much as I got rid of that phobia, I always get on the right side of the escalator. So
the
that's
right
probably
side?
Yes, the right side.
Okay.
The left keeps me a bit edgy.
Wow. Okay. I actually thought you'd say, I went to Alliance. You know that? Okay. But anyway, that's actually a good fun fact. 20 years in the game. Tell us a bit about your highlights. What are some of your, proudest moments in the HR space over the 20 years that you've been in the field?
Wow, 20 years, it's been a long time. I think there's been quite a bit of experiences that I've had, not just in Kenya, around the region. And I think in the last 20 or so years, one of the experiences that I cherish the most is when I spent time in Nigeria on secondment. And I think that was one of the most amazing experiences that I had. I was seconded to work for Guinness Nigeria, and I was also supporting a new business that was setting up in Nigeria. That was Diageo Brands Nigeria. So it was very interesting to go into this new country, new culture, And I think having an opportunity to work with very brilliant minds at that point, and as we set up the organization for Diageo Brands and bringing in new talent into the business, I think it was something that was amazing and fantastic. Looking at the level of talent, I always speak and tell people the level of talent in Nigeria is extremely good. If you have an opportunity to work in Nigeria, I mean, it's something that everyone must do for you to grow into leadership, especially within the Africa space. It's a big market. It's not like, it's extremely competitive. People have extremely good work ethic, especially the people that I worked with. So I think that's one of the highlights. And I know I was able to have a lot of impact, even getting recognized by my team members as really settling into the space very well. It was a short period of time, spent close to 5 months there, but for me, it feels like it's probably like 2 years experience in my working life. So that was a very interesting time in my life, and I think there's a lot that I learned from then that I still implement and sort of do in my day-to-day work, even up to today.
Oh, interesting. So let me ask, what function of HR do you enjoy the most? I know you've touched on growing.
Okay. Yes, I think right now I enjoy a lot of, when I look at HR strategy, leadership development, that for me really gets close to my heart on ensuring that, how do you want to grow an organization with focus on people? And also, do we have the right leaders in the organization? So for me, that leadership development and supporting leaders to be better leaders to the teams that they're managing or leading, I think for me is the part that I enjoy most about HR. I think second to that, I've always had a soft spot for talent acquisition and just identifying the right talent for the organizations that I've worked for. And I've had very interesting experiences where I've recruited people and we've had friendships that have developed for many, many years because of the experience that we had during that process of talent acquisition. So I've made very good friends. I've seen people who I could tell were absolutely fantastic talent, and I've seen them grow to serious leadership positions, even in different companies. So I think at that point, I'm very proud of myself to say that, I was able to see potential in those people and be able to determine that these people are going to grow and they're going to impact the organizations that they work for. So talent acquisition is very close to my heart. And I think it's some of those things that you could wake me up in the middle of the night and tell me, go ahead and interview or select and tell me whether this person is right for the organization. And I think I would be able to do that.
Wow. Then I think you're the right person to have this conversation with. So I'd like actually to talk a bit about what you've mentioned, both aspects, and we can start with identifying. So first and foremost, how do you go about identifying leaders who, have this potential, and then after you have identified them, how do you grow them? Give them opportunities so that they can grow their leadership capabilities.
Okay, so I think when it comes to identifying leaders and, the potential and growth prospects within leaders, I think one of the first things that you would look at, of course, is performance. And I say performance is something that's very important for you to determine whether someone is going to perform in other roles that they're going to do once they grow. So, and I think the way performance management is handled in many organizations probably needs to change. It's not just an annual process. It's not something that, just has very formal checkpoints. But I think of all the informal checkpoints that you do as leaders with the people that you manage that help you understand whether someone is performing or not. And you don't get clouded by, those biases that exist where it's at the end of the year and someone is having a fantastic last month or is having a really bad last 1 or 2 months and you're judging their performance based on that. So performance is the first thing that you're going to look at. And I talked about potential, which is something that's very important because not everyone has the potential to perform and
Really?
or is looking towards growing. So there are people who are really good at doing the things that they're doing. But do they have the drive? Do they have the ambition? Do they have the... It's almost like, let's give an example of an elastic. How far can you expand it? Or has it lost its elasticity? can you stretch it and it's able to do much more? So even when you look at individuals, is this person able to do much more than they're doing currently? And do they want to do much more? Because I've had instances where people tell you, you know what, this is the maximum level that I'd want to grow in an organization. I don't want to become the head of marketing. I don't want to become the head of HR, but I'd like to be number 2 in command. And that's the maximum that I want to do. So trying to grow that person and say you want to elevate them to leadership may not be really a good thing to do. There are ways in which you can identify talent, and like where I work, we have the performance potential matrix that we use, and you're able, when you map the talent, looking at an individual's past performance, probably the last 2-3 years, and the potential that they have to then grow to take up additional responsibilities or roles, then you're able to identify those people who have high performance, high potential, and those are really your talent. And then you can then focus on how you'll then grow them to be able to take up roles. And what's very interesting that I've noticed in my experience in the recent past is that anytime we do the mapping exercise and you focus on the people who have high performance, high potential, and you know, it's a 9-grid matrix.
Oh, it's the 9-grid?
Yes, the 9-grid matrix that is there. So anytime you focus on those people, they're the ones who tend to then grow within the business. Because there are people who are sort of steady performers, they'll always deliver, but they're probably not looking at growing, or you cannot stretch them much further than where they are. So once you've identified you know, someone's performance, someone's potential, and the sort of the path that you'd like to take them, and you use this a lot, especially for succession planning, apart from just succession planning, also for leadership development, then you're able to then identify what are the actions that you need to take to be able to grow this individual to take up leadership positions.
Oh, first and foremost, I love that you mentioned the 9-grid. It's something that we're looking to integrate in our performance management module in our system. So that's cool. Then secondly, how do you go on about creating an environment that encourages employees to perform? Because you have to have the right environment to perform, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that I talked about, I think earlier, was the check-ins and the performance check-ins that you would then have with the people that you manage, or as a leader, and even as an individual, setting those up with your manager so that you have points at which you're having conversations with your manager about what are the things that you want to do, how do you want to grow, what are the areas that you're struggling in, where can you get support. I think by creating an environment to be able to do that helps you identify the growth potential for the individual. So I think that's one of the things that you really need to formalize, and it's going to help you, because it's never about surprises. You know, if you're having conversations on a weekly, bi-weekly, or once a month, depending on how many reports that you have, you're then able to tell whether this person is performing or not. But then also, I think the other thing that's very important is, and a lot of organizations sort of miss this, especially when you're looking at performance management. I know there's a lot of discussion now that is performance management even supposed to be there in the first place. But one of the things that we then miss out when you're looking at performance management is you want to assess people on activities and tasks rather than the outcome of what it is that they're doing. So if you're able to then show people what is the outcome of what they're doing, and you're measuring the outcomes, then you can be able to say that, you know what, you're able to tell whether people are performing or not. So it's how you set up your objectives to be extremely outcome based rather than task and responsibilities aligned. So that does help.
Speaking of conversations, how can we create a culture that encourages people to give productive, direct feedback consistently? Because I feel like that's one way of supporting the employee to grow, like when you get constant, productive feedback.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
So one of the ways of ensuring that people are able to give good feedback is developing your leaders. I've been through leadership training that sort of takes you through how you provide feedback and in which circumstances you provide feedback. And I'd give you a simple example of sometimes, like say if there's something that someone is doing and you want either a change in behavior, and what you want to do is address what it is that they're doing that you want the behavior change, not the person. And so that's one of the ways to give feedback. And if you're equipped with tools like what we call in our world, there's an abbreviation, STTP, straight to the point.
Ish.
So like if you're there's something that really you're doing that I feel is either impacting the team negatively or impacting on you being able to achieve what it is that you're doing, then I need to set up the conversation, be able to deliver what it is that I'm telling you. This is what I am seeing, and not you, but in this task you are required to do this, and this is how you've done it, but I think the next time you need to do it in a certain way, because you're almost being very direct about the feedback that you want to give. So I think equipping people through using such tools, and I always say there's a lot of self-learning that's even available online that you can be able to develop yourself to be able to understand. How do you then provide feedback? So that's one side. The leader needs to be able to understand the feedback. But I think also as individuals, we also need to be very self-aware, because I think emotional intelligence is one of the things that helps you understand when feedback is being given to you, because you are very aware about what it is that you're being told, how you react to situations. I think for me that's something that's also very important, that the individual really needs to be able to be very self-aware, know how they react to certain situations. And then I think being able to divorce yourself from, or even when the manager is giving you feedback, you just understand that it's all about work.
Yeah.
And it's all there to improve you.
So you're not taking it personally.
If you say so.
If I say
Don't take it personally.
Okay. But I like the abbreviation, STTP.
Yeah, straight to the point.
STTP. Okay, I'll use that. Yeah. So let's also talk a bit about more strategies that companies can take on to ensure that their employees are engaged, they're happy, they're satisfied, and they're performing.
Yeah.
Would you have some strategies in mind?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of strategies that you can do, and currently I would say even where I'm working at, we did last year have an opportunity to hear the voice of the employees and see what are the things that the employees would want through a survey. We did an employee value proposition survey to sort of understand why, what are the key areas that employees value, employees feel that help them connect with why they want to work with our organization. And from there, we then had to now sort of come up with action points to say, okay, these are the areas that we're not doing very well in, whether it's communication, whether it's leadership, whether it's developing people for their roles. And then from there, we were then able to now come up with action plans. One, get the feedback, analyze it, sort of question it. One of the things that you can do with feedback, and anytime you get feedback through value surveys or employee surveys, is sort of get a focus group and a smaller focus group to sort of deep dive into what the results are saying and sort of question that. Because sometimes what I've learned is, depending on the season and what's happening around the time that you do the survey, some things may be a bit skewed. So you need to then have a focus group that deep dives, and then you're able to then say, these are the things that we want to do. Then now is, once you've identified those things, then you need to look at what are the things that are quick wins, things that you can do immediately to be able to sort of turn around, and drive engagement with employees, and what are the things that you can do long term. And once you do that, then communication is very key, because once you do the surveys, you need to feed back to the employees and tell them, this is what we've heard from you and this is what we are doing. And then you always have to keep referencing what it is that you have done and what impact it has had. and then go back to the survey probably a year or two later and see if your numbers are looking good.
I'm generally a curious person, so I'm so tempted to ask. I don't know if you are at liberty to share some of the findings of your survey. Maybe just one thing that you took out from the survey that you did.
No, I think if I look at it from a Kenya basis, because we did it as a region, so it's very interesting. So to look at statistics and say sometimes, and I don't know whether it's a Kenyan thing, that we're very critical of ourselves.
That is true.
And I think, and if I look at, I don't want to go into politics, but if I look at even whatever is happening in the country, yes, there are things that are happening that are positive, but we're still very critical of things. For me, one of the things that I think stands out is when you do a survey and maybe the employees say they want to see a lot more, say, the unity within the leadership. And what are the things? Because yes, they see you as leaders, but then they want to see you united. And for us, that was one of the things that, you know what, okay, we need to do a lot more as leaders. And every time we have activities in different departments, and it's not just letting the leader of that department be there, even if it's not. And I think when you're in leadership in an organization, it's not just about your function. You're in leadership in the organization. So you belong to every part of the organization. And so I think for us, that's part of the feedback that was like, you know, you guys need to sort of come together a lot much more.
Okay. So I'd like us to also talk about compensation, because I'm pretty sure it's one of the factors that contribute to engagement. So what's your philosophy on compensation? How do you ensure that you provide competitive pay for your employees?
So it's very interesting. I wanted to pick up from the previous point on compensation and let you know we never asked any question about compensation in the survey.
Didn't.
Because sometimes it gets skewed.
Okay.
I think there's other ways that you can be able to find out how you're performing in terms of your compensation. There's a lot of surveys and there's tools that you can be able to use to find out how you're doing when it comes to compensation. It tends to cloud things sometimes because it's a very emotive thing. So what's my approach to compensation? I think there's various things. I mean, if you work in an organization like I do that also has partially, you know, part of the workforce is unionized, there's a certain philosophy that you then have on how you then approach, you know, pay that goes through a collective labor agreement or collective bargaining agreement. So there are many factors that you look at there in terms of, you know, especially when you're looking at increments, you're guided by, you know, and in negotiations, I always tell HR professionals, one of the things is the ability to pay. And I think if you look at one of the challenges that the government was having around the recently ended Medic strike was a CBA that was negotiated, and the government comes and says, we don't have the ability to pay. I think one of the things that is really important in your compensation principles and policies, what position do you want your remuneration and your compensation and benefits, and is it sustainable? The other thing that you also look at is not just sustainability, but I think, and more, we're in a global scale where people are looking at, you know, you're not just providing a fair wage. You know, yes, it's good enough to provide a fair wage, but at the end of the day, you know, even human rights is very important.
Absolutely.
I should not, and I think maybe it's the right thing is to say provide a fair wage, but not just, you know, a minimum wage, which means that in as much as the law requires you to pay a certain amount, but you need to look at your industries and you're saying, are you giving guys pay that probably can just not sustain them totally, in as much as you've beat the minimum pay. So I think my philosophy around compensation and benefits is to push for a level where people can live a decent life. It's not, no one will ever be satisfied with compensation at whatever level.
You might be surprised.
It's majority of people.
Majority,
I mean, it's only outliers who would say, really, I'm okay, very happy and I'm okay.
Yeah.
Even if you're one of the top billionaires in the world, you'd still want to make more.
Okay.
So I think the philosophy should not be to make people happy. It's what is sustainable, what allows people, if you're looking at engagement especially, and we've talked about engagement because compensation ties with engagement. Pay people enough that they don't have to think about pay.
Yeah.
And they can think about other reasons to be happy at the organization rather than just the money that they're getting. So sustainability, providing a wage that allows someone to be able to live a decent life. It's not an extravagant life, but a decent life. And the ability of the organization to pay. Because it's one thing to say, okay, you're going to raise salaries, and then at the end of the day, if you're in an organization that has a very low profit or margin, then you will struggle.
Sense,
and if maybe your employee costs is very high, then it will be unsustainable for business. So those are some of the key things that I'd look at. And I think more and more now, some of the things that I'm thinking and new trends and thinking about is how then can you customize your compensation and benefits. There's a lot of conversation around that. Give people an opportunity to choose what is relevant for them, because some people will tell you this is not a benefit that's relevant to me, and this would be more relevant to me. So that flexibility, and I mean, it's a concept that we've talked about in HR for as long as I've been in HR, but I'm yet to see it getting implemented.
I like
fully.
I like what you've said. I truly believe that empowerment is like freedom to choose. So in your industry, and I feel like you've partially answered this question, do you get a lot of salary negotiation requests from your employees, and how do you handle that with still being transparent? Are you pro-transparency? I've just assumed that you're pro-transparency.
So I think, like I said, there's two segments of if you look at it, especially in compensation. So where you have structured collective bargaining agreements, that is pretty open. The employees can then see what is the entry for this grade, what are the increments that they will get at the end of the year. But when you look at more of non-unionizable type of maybe the management type of stuff, then there's a difference. There's a lot of proponents. I mean, if you look at, say, maybe the UN system, it's very clear. It's out there. If you know someone is at this grade, this is how much they earn, these are the steps. But not many organizations are very open to say this is how much people earn. If you look at government, it's the same thing. In government, if someone is at this level. I think the other day I saw an article that was talking about the military and had put up all the salaries of everyone in the different forces from all levels. But of course, in private organizations, that tends to be a bit, you don't put it out there. So do we have requests, or in my experience in HR, I've worked in very many places, do we have requests for people to negotiate their salary? Yes. How do you do it? You know, and it's very easy when I speak from an employee side of things to come to the table when you're performing, and there's reasons that you're putting, solid reasons that you're putting in place towards your compensation. I've always argued and said, you don't say that Pili is getting paid more than me, so I'd want to earn as her.
That's really
but what's your justification? So I think yes, I would have that conversation and focus on what is it, what are they, someone can be able to justify and say, you know what, I'm in commercial, I bring in this X amount of business, I feel that my compensation should grow by X amount, and I'd appreciate that change. And then from the internal side and from the HR side of things and the leadership side of the business, you then have that conversation, and you may have the visibility of others as you're making that decision, but you'll not have that conversation with the employee or as you're making that decision. Because you need to separate that. It's not individual. It's not that person X is earning this and person Y. No. I think that also leads to a bit of bias around compensation.
I think I'm so happy you brought that out, because most of the times as employees we forget to actually lead with value, because that's why you're being paid, because of the value that you're bringing to an organization, right? All right, so as we draw to a close, I want to ask, what future trends are you envisioning, like in the people ops space, in the leadership development space?
Yeah. So future trends that I'm seeing, of course, when I look at leadership development, I think there's going to be a lot more focus on, a long time ago we always used to say you want to go to class and take this course and whatever. And the moment you take the course, you get your certificate, you're not able to even sort of transfer that into the workplace. So there's going to be a lot more, especially in leadership learning, where there's going to be peer-to-peer learning. So if we take up sort of a group, leadership development, then you would be learning with your peers and, getting to, sort of feed off each other and help develop each other. And so the classroom training will be very little, but more of peer-to-peer learning, experiential learning is going to be big. Self-paced learning, I think it's that one you can never take it away. And I think use of more tools, and I think learning is very available online, and that is something that will continue to be there in that space around leadership development. But I think also the individual drive to, develop yourself is going to really make the difference in leaders. If I look at people ops, I think there's something like we're probably doing within our organization, and it's really how do you, make HR easier. And there's going to be a lot of use of technology. I mean, there are other organizations that are maybe at a far advanced space, but if I look at the use of technology, say for example having an app that people can be able to communicate within the organization and drive engagement, and you can be able to read those statistics and numbers, like for example what we're doing ourselves, and also how are you going to simplify HR processes by having really good HR information systems that drive that. And of course that's a challenge that we have to elevate, to really develop systems that do work for people and make it easier. I think people ops is going to be more about how do you engage people, how do you onboard people, how do you treat employees as the internal customers that they are. And I think that's going to be a big shift in people ops going forward, that it's not just about the administrative part of it, it's really about the employee life cycle and how they feel when they're in the organization.
Wow, I was smiling from ear to ear when you were just talking about you. I'm so glad you asked me why. Because I was just thinking mentally, filling out a checkbox. So when you talked about the peer-to-peer learning, I think that's something that as an organization at Elevate HR, we are really big on. You also talked about technology, use of technology in how HR is done. That's also what we are doing here at Elevate HR, developing innovation so that people can focus on what matters the most, their work and people. And then also you talked about self-paced learning. I think that's one of the things that we're doing with our HR community, the master classes that we are putting out. But then let me just take this moment to urge the HR professionals who are listening to join our community. A lot of professional development is happening there. We have a lot of cool stuff. So if you're a people pro, please ensure you sign up to join our community. So that is really exciting. I'm excited that we are actually playing a role in that. So I want to finish off with just one last question, and this one is a personal one. I want to know what leadership legacy you want to leave behind.
Okay. So when I'm done, or when I'm not here, what would I want people to remember me for? I think for me, my leadership legacy is to be remembered as a person who brought in human to HR. Someone who, brought the human touch and was very in touch with people and their needs, even as in whatever different ways I interacted with people. And someone who always focused on getting to improve the HR profession. I think for me, that's one of the things that's very close to my heart. That how can we have HR professionals who think very differently in the different organizations that they work for, and are able to cause, grow leaders, identify talent. So the legacy that I'd want to leave behind is, someone who, and I always say, I'm big on my purpose, and my purpose in life is making a difference. So that is my leadership legacy. That at the end of the day, if anyone asks, what do you think about what did Wycliffe do? I think he made a difference, and he was in touch with people, and it did not matter, what tough decisions needed to be made. The person was put first, and then you are able to then even guide organizations to do the right things, even if there's tough times and there's tough things that need to be done, but really just doing the right thing when it comes to people. So I think that's what I'd say.
Wow, what a beautiful legacy. Let me just give you your flowers.
Yes.
And tell you that even in our community, you have really made a difference. So thank you for all the work that you have done in the HR space. Yeah. Please keep doing you.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. Again, a reminder, if you're looking for a payroll partner, we're here for you. Or if you're looking to outsource your entire HR function, Elevate HR is your plug. So sign up on the link below and our team will reach out to you. Till next time, bye.